Alright, good morning. We are here with break 352, a pick your team 25 Traders Titanium Priority Combo break featuring. We have our starter packs, our mini starter case, so 20 starter packs in total. We have our priority box, and we have our sealed case back there. Let's get our team list for today. We have Broncos, Jeff Warnes, Raiders, Peter Lowe, Bulldogs, Peter Lowe, Sharks, Paul Cohen, Dolphins, Aaron Livingston, Titans, Lee Marshall, Manly, Jay Tobin, Storm, Peter Lowe, Knights, Ben Condon, Cowboys, Nicholas Verwee, sorry if that's not right, Eels, Daryl Barton, Panthers, Nathan Seal, Rabbitohs, David Morton, Dragons, Craig Milson, Roosters, Josh Ellis, Warriors, Aaron Livingston, and Tigers, Josh Ellis. Good luck, everyone. We're going to get stuck into the starters. We have listed a new pick your team break this morning. So if your team's been sold out and you've been waiting for a new one, now's your chance. There are a few spots already gone. Roosters, Dolphins, and one other one. I can't remember. So get in quick. Let's get these out. Hi, Lee. Welcome to the break and good luck, mate. Almost there. Alright, that's it. Last two. Let's go. First starter packet for the break. In the bronze, Nico Hines for Sharks. In the bronze again, Ethan Strange for Raiders. In the silver, 157, Nathan Cleary for Panthers. Hope everyone had their tips in for yesterday's game. I know I tipped Panthers, expecting him to be a bit hungry for that win. In the silver again, 171, Nathan Cleary again. In the gold, 104, Ryan Pappenhausen for Storm. In the bronze, Ryan Pappenhausen for Storm. In the bronze, Mitchell Moses for the Eels. In the silver, number 42, Mitchell Moses for the Eels. In the titanium, number 23, Patrick Carrigan for Broncos. In the silver, number 50, Ryan Pappenhausen for Storm. In the bronze, Roger Tuivasa-Sheck for Warriors. In the silver, 198, Ethan Strange for Raiders. In the bronze, Valami Kickout for Bulldogs. In the titanium, number 26, David Fafita for Titans. Pile's getting a bit messy, just tidy them up so they don't fall everywhere. In the silver, 120, Patrick Carrigan for Broncos. In the silver, number 73, Cameron Murray for the Rabbitohs. Four starter packs left. In the bronze, Tommy Dearden for the Cowboys. In the bronze, Nathan Cleary for Panthers. In the gold, number 81, Luciano Alei-Alua for the Dragons. Last one, here we go. Another gold, number 87, Herbie Farnworth for the Dolphins. Alright, let's get into these packets out of the starter packs. If you are trying to comment and you're having any dramas with that, please remember you must be subscribed to the channel. That is so we can reduce spam comments and links in our chat. To keep it a bit safer, Blake Steep, Rising Stars for the Roosters. Raiders Parallel Checklist. Rising Stars, Bailey Haywood for Bulldogs. Jojo Fafita, Parallel for the Titans. Club Heroes, Jackson Purdue for the Cowboys. James Tedesco, Parallel for the Roosters. Fan faves, Connor Watson for the Roosters. Ryan Pappenhausen, Parallel for Storm. Rising Stars, Casey McLean for Panthers. Jerome Hughes, parallel for Storm. Rising Stars, Samula Fainu for the Tigers. Sam Walker, parallel for the Roosters. Excuse me, Season to Remember, Alexis for the Dragons. Get it out. Isaiah Katoa, parallel for Dolphins. Fan Faves, Mitchell Moses for Eels. Will Penasini, parallel for the Eels. Rising Stars, Fletcher Baker for Knights. Parallel Latrell Mitchell for the Rabbitohs. Fan Faves, Brian To'o for Panthers. Isaiah Yeo, parallel for Panthers. Rising Stars, Skylar Adams for Broncos. Micah Sevo, parallel for Eels. Season to Remember, Tommy Talau for Manly. Ezra Mann, parallel for Broncos. Fan Faves, Ethan Strange for the Raiders. Knights, parallel checklist. Rising Stars, Hopper Wate for Manly. Tyrell Sloan, parallel for the Dragons. Season to Remember, Renato Molitalo for the Sharks. Blake Brayley, parallel for the Sharks. Fan Faves, Josh King for Storm. Renato Molitalo, parallel for the Sharks. Rising Stars, Lily Peacock for Cowboys. Bradman Best, parallel for the Knights. Season to Remember, Clinton Gufferson for the Eels. Lachlan Galvin, parallel for the Tigers. Women's NRL, Stephanie Hancock for the Dragons. Dolphins, parallel checklist. Rising Stars, Sione Finau for Dragons. Daly Cherry Evans, parallel for Manly. Women's NRL, Kira Dibb for the Cowboys. Alex Seifer, parallel for the Tigers. Season to Remember, Herbie Farmworth for the Dolphins. Keon Kolomatangi, parallel for Rabbitohs. Club Heroes, Joseph Tarpanay for the Raiders. Warriors Parallel Checklist. Parallel Reese Robson for the Cowboys. Club Heroes, Lakeland for the Dragons. Matthew Tomoko, parallel for the Raiders. Quincy Dodd, Women's NRL for the Dragons. David Fafita, parallel for Titans. Rising Stars for the Storm. Tohu Harris, parallel for the Warriors. Club Heroes, Blake Moser for the Broncos. Cam Munster, parallel for Storm. Lindsay Collins, parallel for the Roosters. Rising Stars, Ethan King for the Roosters. Hudson Young, parallel for the Raiders. Showcase, David Fafita for Titans. Bulldogs, parallel checklist. Season to remember, Adam Dewey for the Tigers. Dylan Edwards, parallel for Panthers. Fan faves, Kalen Ponga for the Knights. Bryce Cartwright, parallel for the Eels. Rising Stars, Dan Kerr for the Eels. Patrick Carrigan, parallel for Broncos. Women's NRL, Jessica Elliston for the Titans. Dean Mariner, parallel for Broncos. Rising Stars, Dion for the Rabbitohs. Brian To'o, parallel for Panthers. The Converters, Romy Tietzel for the Broncos. Tamir Martin, parallel for the Warriors. Rising Stars, Josiah for Titans. Matt Burton, parallel for the Bulldogs. Mark Nichols, fan faves for the Dolphins. Reed Marnie, parallel for Bulldogs. Samantha Bremner, season to remember for the Roosters. Eels, parallel checklist. About 2/3 of the way through those packets now, I think. Close to it. And then we'll get started on the case. Tiana Penatani, fan faves for the Sharks. Jermaine Isako, parallel for Dolphins. Rising Stars, Harrison Edwards for the Cowboys. Greg Marzu, parallel for Knights. Season to remember, Connor Tracy for the Bulldogs. Jack DeBellin, parallel for the Dragons. Women's NRL Dragons Checklist. Scott Drinkwater, parallel for the Cowboys. Rising Stars, Oren Keeley for the Dolphins. Tommy Dearden, parallel for the Cowboys. Season to remember, Sanua Taruva for Panthers. Xavier Savage, parallel for the Raiders. The Converters, Latrell Mitchell for the Rabbitohs. Alex Johnston, parallel for the Rabbitohs. Rising Stars, Mawala Graham for the Warriors. Max Plath, parallel for the Dolphins. The Converters, Kalen Ponga for the Knights. Jake Trbojevic, parallel for Manly. Jaden Campbell, fan faves for the Titans. Cody Walker, parallel for the Rabbitohs. Season to remember, Jamal Fogarty for the Raiders. Kalen Ponga, parallel for the Knights. Fan faves, Alex Johnston for the Rabbitohs. Kyle Flanagan, parallel for the Dragons. Rising Stars, Grace Kemp for the Raiders. Brighton Nakora, parallel for the Sharks. Showcase, Lindsay Collins for the Roosters. Connor Watson, parallel for the Roosters. Parallel, Jason Taumalolo for the Cowboys. Rising Stars, Leilani Montgomery for the Titans. Jacob Preston, parallel for the Bulldogs. Premiership Predictor, NRLW, number 37 for the Raiders. Parallel AJ Brimson for the Titans. Showcase a group header card. So we'll randomise that at the end. Avasai Coruscant parallel for the Tigers. Parallel Cameron McInnes for the Sharks. And the last packet for the starter packs. Packet number 60. Rising Stars, Casey Ray for the Dragons. And Ruben Garrick, parallel for Manly. Well, so do I, David. I hope you do well, mate. Let's just tidy these up and we will find out who's scoring today's case card. Number 46, Edric Lee for the Dolphins. Right, let's get these out. Alright, almost empty, guys. Alright, last one. Let's move these ones over there. Yeah. Alright, first box, first packet from the case. Let's go. Fan faves Yasmin Clydesdale for the Knights. Ronaldo Molitalo parallel for the Sharks. Rising Stars Lily Peacock for the Cowboys. Bradman Best parallel for the Knights. Season to remember, David Armstrong for the Knights. Blake Brayley parallel for the Sharks. Fan faves, Tohu Harris for the Warriors. Knights parallel checklist. Season to remember, Rebecca Pollard for the Tigers. Lachlan Galvin parallel for the Tigers. Gold parallel, Sean Lane for the Eels, number 7. Rising Stars, Hopper Wate for Manly. Tyrell Sloan, parallel for Dragons. Club Heroes, Alexis and Angelina for the Dragons. Cameron Munster, parallel for Storm. Rising Stars, Sione for the Dragons. Daly Cherry Evans, parallel for Manly. Women's NRL, Jessie Southwell for the Knights. David Fafita, parallel for the Titans. Rising Stars for the Storm. Tohu Harris, parallel for the Warriors. Season to remember, Dale Finucane for the Sharks. Ezra Mam, parallel for the Broncos. Women's NRL, Jakaya Whitfield for the Cowboys. Dolphins, parallel checklist. Fan faves, Mackenzie Wiki for the Raiders. Isaiah Yo, parallel for Panthers. Rising Stars, Skylar Adams for the Broncos. Micah Sivo, parallel for the Eels. Showcase, Lachlan Galvin for the Tigers. Bulldogs, parallel checklist. Converters, Nick Meaney for the Storm. Alex Johnston, parallel for the Rabbitohs. Women's Gold, parallel, Madison Bartlett for the Raiders, number 47. Lindsay Collins, parallel for the Roosters. Rising Stars, Oren Keeley for the Dolphins. Tommy Dearden, parallel for the Cowboys. Season to remember, Daly Cherry Evans for Manly. Xavier Savage, parallel for the Raiders. Rising Stars, Ethan King for the Roosters. Hudson Young, parallel for the Raiders. Fan phase, Nathan Cleary for Panthers. Cody Walker, parallel for the Rabbitohs. Rising Stars, Moala Graham for the Warriors. Max Plath, parallel for the Dolphins. Converters, Kyle Flanagan for the Dragons. Jake Trbojevic, parallel for Manly. Converters, parallel, Lauren Brown for the Titans. Jason Taumalolo, parallel for the Cowboys. Ellie Johnston, Women's NRL for the Sharks. Showcase, your favourite. Alex Seyfarth, parallel for the Tigers. Any particular one of the showcase, all the showcase? Fan faves in the team for the Rabbitohs. Rising Stars, Grace Kemp for the Raiders. Parallel, Brighton Nakora for the Sharks. Isaac Tago, season to remember for the Panthers. Kalen Ponga, parallel for the Knights. Yeah, fair enough. Showcase Luciano Leilua for the Dragons. Connor Watson, parallel for the Roosters. Fan faves, AJ Brimson for the Titans. Kyle Flanagan, parallel for the Dragons. Rising Stars, Casey McLean for the Panthers. Jerome Hughes, parallel for Storm. White Authentic, number 136. Joe Offengowie for the Eels. Alexander Brimson, parallel for the Titans. Fan faves, Avili for the Rabbitohs. Bryce Cartwright, parallel for the Eels. Rising Stars, Montgomery for the Titans. Jacob Preston, parallel for the Bulldogs. Club Heroes, Connor Watson for the Roosters. Warriors, parallel checklist. 2 packs to go for the box. Rising Stars, Dan Kerr for the Eels. Parallel, Patrick Carrigan for the Broncos. Season to remember, Madison Bartlett for the Raiders and Dylan Edwards, parallel for Panthers. That's the first box done and dusted. Let's get these in, push this out of the way, and get into box number 2. Season to remember, Samantha Bremner for the Roosters. Tommy Turbo, parallel for Manly. Mark Nichols, fan faves for the Dolphins. Samula parallel for the Tigers. Rising Stars, Chevy Stewart for the Raiders. Nico Hines, parallel for the Sharks. Club Heroes, Max Plath for the Dolphins. Dane Gagai, parallel for the Knights. Rachel Pearson, Women's NRL for the Eels. Dragons, parallel. Season to remember, Alexis for the Dragons. Keanu Kinney, parallel for the Titans. Fan faves, Reece Walsh for the Broncos. Dallin Watine Zalesniak, parallel for the Warriors. Women's NRL, Rakea Horn in the gold, number 123 for the for the Tigers. Rising Stars, Rory Owen for the Eels, parallel Reece Welsh for Broncos. Showcase, Luke Brooks for Manly. Panthers, parallel checklist. Milwaukee Fodawaker, gold parallel for the Titans, number 70. Will Penasini, parallel for the Eels. Converters, Pauline Razabel for the Tigers. Reece Robson, parallel for the Cowboys. Women's NRL, Olivia Kernick for the Roosters. Matthew Tomoko, parallel for the Raiders. Rising Stars, Josiah for the Titans. Matt Burton, parallel for the Bulldogs. Season to remember, Jamie Chapman for the Titans. James Tedesco, parallel for the Roosters. Rising Stars, Fletcher Sharp for the Knights. Latrell Mitchell, parallel for the Rabbitohs. Season to remember, Jai Arrow for the Rabbitohs. Isaiah Katoa, parallel for the Dolphins. Season to remember, Katoni Staggs for the Broncos. Tamir Martin, parallel for the Warriors. Fan faves, Reed Marnie for the Bulldogs. Scott Drinkwater, parallel for the Cowboys. Rising Stars, Blake Steep for Roosters. Raiders parallel checklist. Converters, Adam Reynolds for the Broncos. Keon Kolomatangi, parallel for the Rabbitohs. Women's NRL, Madison Bartlett for the Raiders. Jermaine Isako, parallel for Dolphins. Rising Stars, Casey Array for the Dragons. Ruben Garrick, parallel for Manly. Season to remember, Kyle Felt for the Cowboys. Apisai Coruscant, parallel for the Tigers. Fan faves, Sarah Togatuki for the Tigers. Cameron McInnes, parallel for Sharks. Fan faves, Tommy Dearden for the Cowboys. Tolotol Koala, parallel for Manly. Rising Stars, Georgia Hanaway for the Sharks. Jareem Bula, parallel for the Tigers. Rising Stars, Harrison Edwards for the Cowboys. Greg Marsu, parallel for Knights. Fan faves in the team for the Roosters. Jack DeBellin, parallel for the Dragons. Club Heroes, Tommy Dearden for the Cowboys. Ryan Pappenhausen, parallel for the Storm. Last packet for box number 2. Rising Stars, Bailey Haywood for the Bulldogs. Jojo Fafita, parallel for Titans. Converters, parallel, Nico Hines for the Sharks. Rising Stars, Samula for the Tigers. Sam Walker, parallel for the Roosters. Fan phase, Tommy Turbo for Manly. Dean Mariner, parallel for the Broncos. Rising Stars, Dion for the Rabbitohs. Brian Totter, parallel for Panthers. 2 packets left for box number 2. Showcase Roger Tuivasa Sheck for the Warriors. Eels parallel checklist. Tyrone Peachy, retirements for Panthers. Reed Marnie, parallel for the Bulldogs. And that is the end of box number 2. Let's go. Stick with the top row, box number 3. Rising Stars, Lachlan Galvin for the Tigers. Victor Radley, parallel for the Roosters. Season to remember, Jack Whiten for the Rabbitohs. Murray Talagi, parallel for the Cowboys. Season to remember, Zach Lomax for the Dragons. Titans parallel checklist. Fan faves, Patrick Carrigan for the Broncos. Wade Egan, parallel for the Warriors. Rising Stars, Charlie Geimer for the Eels. Selwyn Cobbo, parallel for Broncos. Heroes, Sarah Togatuki for the Tigers. Moses Leota, parallel for Panthers. Pauline Razabel, women's NRL for the Tigers. Jermaine Hopgood, parallel for the Eels. Hudson Young, gold parallel for the Raiders, number 49. Mitchell Moses, parallel for the Eels. Rising Stars, Tony Francis for the Titans. Connor Tracy, parallel for the Bulldogs. Season to remember, Jaden Campbell for the Titans. Dominic Young, parallel for the Roosters. Fan phase, Stephen Crichton for the Bulldogs. Reuben Cotter, parallel for the Cowboys. Rising Stars, Peter for the Rabbitohs. Scott Sorensen, parallel for Panthers. Rising Stars, Alaya for the Roosters. Jamal Fogarty, parallel for the Raiders. Showcase Mitchell Moses for the Eels. Jai Arrow parallel for the Rabbitohs. Team fan faves for the Broncos. Jack Bostock parallel for the Dolphins. Season to remember, Jock Madden for the Broncos. Mitchell Barnett parallel for the Warriors. Hamoli Olaka'atu fan faves for Manly. Broncos parallel checklist. Rising Stars Larkin for the Dragons. Luke Brooks parallel for Manly. Season to remember, Chad Townsend for the Cowboys. Justin Olam parallel for the Tigers. Fan faves, Dream Buller for the Tigers. Parallel Sharks checklist. Fan faves, Jakaya Whitfield for the Cowboys. KO Weeks parallel for the Raiders. Women's gold, Abby Church. Not gold, sorry. The yellow on the side put me off, my bad. Abby Church for the Heels. Nick Meaney parallel for the Storm. And our Black Authentic. Number 25. Kyle Flanagan for the Dragons. Jaden Campbell parallel for the Titans. Rising Stars, Lily Ann White for the Knights. Taveta Totola parallel for the Rabbitohs. Showcase Ethan Strange for the Raiders. Jeremy Marshall King parallel for the Dolphins. Women's NRL Gold, Ellie Johnston for the Sharks, number 35. Manly parallel checklist. Rising Stars, Liam Eason for the Sharks. Adam Dewey parallel for the Tigers. The converters, Rachel Pearson for the Eels. Thomas Hazelton parallel for the Sharks. Women's NRL, Zahara Tamara for the Raiders. Phoenix Crossland parallel for the Knights. Converters Jamal Fogarty for the Raiders. Jacob Little parallel for the Dragons. Rising Stars Ethan for Manly. Jaden Sewer parallel for the Dragons. Season to remember, Bradman Best for the Knights. Xavier Coates parallel for Storm. Fan Faves Dallin Witeen Zalesniak for the Warriors. Alefiana Khan-Pierre parallel for Titans. The Converters Gold Zahara Tamara for the Raiders. Jackson Purdue Rising Stars for Cowboys. Kai Pearce Paul parallel for the Knights. And lucky last pack for box number 3. Rising Stars Lazarus for the Storm. Roger Tuvasa Sheck parallel for Warriors. These out of the way. Let's keep going. Box number 4. Season to remember, Zali Faye for the Eels. Luciano Leilua parallel for the Dragons. Fan Faves Ryan Pappenhausen for the Storm. Storm parallel checklist. Rising Stars Harry Hayes for the Bulldogs. Mawaki Fotowaka parallel for Titans. Club Heroes Bailey Haywood for the Bulldogs. Chance Nicole Klopstad parallel for the Warriors. Women's NRL Ella Costa for the Dragons. Adam Reynolds parallel for the Broncos. Gold parallel Connor Watson for the Roosters, number 11. Rising Stars Jai Gray for the Rabbitohs. Liam Martin parallel for Panthers. Season to remember, Sean Johnson for the Warriors. Sean Lane parallel for the Eels. Fan Faves Blake Laurie for the Dragons. Jacob Carraz parallel for the Bulldogs. Rising Stars, Evie McGrath for the Tigers. We have a tackling machines, Max Platt for the Dolphins, number 115. Roosters parallel checklist. Showcase group card. We've got two of them to randomise at the end. Jeremiah Nanai parallel for the Cowboys. Converters parallel, Apasai Coruscant for the Tigers. Morgan Smithies parallel for the Raiders. Rising Stars, Kai Pierce Paul for the Knights. Cameron Murray parallel for the Rabbitohs. Season to remember, Jerome Hughes for Storm. Felice Kafusi parallel for the Dolphins. Fan Faves, Kennedy Sherrington for the Eels. Kamali Olika R2 parallel for Manly. Rising Stars, Samuel Stonestreet for the Sharks. Tigers parallel checklist. Converters, Jaden Campbell for the Titans. William Kennedy parallel for the Sharks. Women's NRL, Jamie Chapman for the Titans. Dylan Lucas parallel for the Knights. Fan Faves in the team for the Warriors. Rising Stars, Caleb Neville for Manly. Raymond Faitala Mariner parallel for the Dragons. Season to remember, the Hammer for the Dolphins. Harry Grant parallel for Storm. Nico Hines, Fan Faves for the Sharks. Big Tino parallel for Titans. Rising Stars, Joe Chan for Storm. Jackson Ford parallel for the Warriors. Women's NRL Cowboys checklist, number 191. Payne Haas parallel for the Broncos. Club Heroes, Fletcher Sharp for the Knights. Nathan Cleary, parallel for Panthers. Rising Stars, Benjamin Takura for Broncos. Parallel Dylan Brown, parallel for Eels. Season to Remember, Matt Burton for Bulldogs. Stephen Crichton, parallel for Bulldogs. Dan Faves, Jessica Surgis for the Roosters. Angus Crichton, parallel for the Roosters. Rising Stars, Max Plath for Dolphins. Elam Lukey, parallel for the Cowboys. Showcase Valami Kickout for the Bulldogs. Ethan Strange, parallel for the Raiders. Sean Johnson, retirements for the Warriors. Rabbitohs, parallel checklist. Rising Stars, Jacob Laban for the Warriors. Kirby Farmworth, parallel for Dolphins. The Converters, Jocelyn Keller for the Roosters. Tommy Talau, parallel for Manly. Where are we at? 5 more packets. Women's NRL Broncos checklist. Charlie Staines, parallel for Tigers. We've got 4 more packets for box number 4. Rising Stars, Morgan Smithies for the Raiders. Jesse Ramian, parallel for the Sharks. Season to Remember, Daniel Tupou for the Roosters. Leo Thompson, parallel for the Knights. Fan Faves, Herbie Farmworth for the Dolphins. Blake Laurie, parallel for the Dragons. Lucky last pack for box number 4. Rising Stars, Maverick Gaia for Panthers. And Elijah Katoa, parallel for Storm. We're up to box number 5, but I just need to quickly duck off. I'll be back in 2 secs. Sorry guys, we are back. Quick toilet run. Hey, on my screen I never left, I'm still opening. Oh, box number 5. Yes, brother. Converters, Scott Drinkwater for the Cowboys. Keanu Kinney, parallel for the Titans. Season to remember, Renato Mulatalo for the Sharks. Katoni Staggs, parallel for the Broncos. Fan faves, Ethan Strange for the Raiders. Isaac Tago, parallel for Panthers. Gold parallel, Stephanie Hancock for the Dragons. Number 14, nice low one. Rising Stars, Josiah for the Broncos. Joe Offengowie, parallel for the Eels. Rising Stars, Liam Henry for Panthers. Trent Leroux, parallel for Storm. Club Heroes, Elsie Albert for the Eels. Falami Kickout, parallel for Bulldogs. Fan faves, Jaden Campbell for the Titans. Dragons, parallel checklist. Women's NRL Roosters checklist. Spencer Linu, parallel for the Roosters. Rising Stars, Chevy Stewart for the Raiders. Nico Hines, parallel for the Sharks. Season to remember, Sanua Taruva for Panthers. Dane Gagai, parallel for Knights. Rising Stars, Jack Bostock for the Dolphins. Cowboys parallel checklist. Season to remember, Tommy Talau for Manly. Joseph Tarpanay, parallel for the Raiders. Fan phase, Brian To'o for Panthers. Jack Whiten, parallel for the Rabbitohs. Showcase, Herbie Farmworth for the Dolphins. Tommy Turbo, parallel for Manly. Gold parallel, Eliza Katoa, number 10 for the Storm. Samula parallel for the Tigers. Rising Stars, Dimitri for the Warriors. The Hammer parallel for Dolphins. Rising Stars, Dion for the Rabbitohs. Ryan Top parallel for Panthers. Women's NRL, Taylor Predibon for the Knights. Dallin Watine Zalesniak parallel for the Warriors. Rising Stars, Bailey Hayward for the Bulldogs. Jojo Fafita parallel for Titans. Season to remember, King Gutho for the Eels. I wonder if he'll have the same name at Dragons. Demand Martin parallel for the Warriors. Alex Johnston, fan faves for the Rabbitohs. Will Penasini parallel for the Eels. Rising Stars, Josiah for the Titans. Matt Burton parallel for the Bulldogs. In the team fan faves for the Bulldogs, James Tedesco parallel for the Roosters. Club Heroes, Keanu Kinney for the Titans. Scott Drinkwater parallel for the Cowboys. Rising Stars, Blake Steep for the Roosters. Raiders parallel checklist. Season to remember, Adam Dewey for the Tigers. Keon Kolomatangi parallel for the Rabbitohs. Fan faves, Kalen Ponga for the Knights. Jermaine Isako parallel for Dolphins. Converters parallel, Sam Walker for the Roosters. Rising Stars, Casey Array for the Dragons. Ruben Garrick parallel for Manly. Showcase, Tommy Dearden for the Cowboys. Abasai Coruscant parallel for Tigers. Women's NRL, Taylor Holmes for the Sharks. Ryan Pappenhausen parallel for Storm. Retirements, Luke Keary for the Roosters. Cameron McInnes, parallel for the Sharks. Rising Stars, Harrison Edwards for the Cowboys, Greg Marzu, parallel for Knights. 4 packets left for box number 5. Converters, Jesse Southwell for the Knights, Jack DeBellon, parallel for the Dragons. Rising Stars, Rory Owen for the Eels, Reece Walsh, parallel for the Broncos. Fan faves, Josh King for the Storm, Dean Mariner, parallel for the Broncos. Season to remember, Jamal Fogarty for the Raiders, Panthers parallel checklist. Another box down. Let's get these out of the way. Alright, box number 6. Season to remember, Troy Fuller for the Dolphins, Cameron Munster parallel for the Storm. Thomas Hazelton, fan faves for the Sharks, David Fifita parallel for the Titans. Rising Stars for the Storm, Tohu Harris parallel for the Warriors. Rising Stars, Georgia Henaway for the Sharks, Dream Buller parallel for the Tigers. Ruben Garrick, the Converters for Manly, Ezra Mam parallel for the Broncos. Women's NRL, Tegan Berry for the Dragons, Isaiah Yeo parallel for Panthers. Fan faves, Will Penasini for the Eels, Tolto Koala parallel for Manly. Rising Stars, Skylar Adams for the Broncos, Micah Sivo parallel for the Eels. Season to remember, Addo Carr for the Bulldogs, Bulldogs parallel checklist. Fan faves, James Tedesco for the Roosters, Lindsay Collins parallel for the Roosters. Rising Stars, Oren Keeley for the Dolphins. Tommy Dearden, parallel for the Cowboys. Season to remember, Cameron Munster for the Storm. Isaiah Katoa, parallel for the Dolphins. Showcase, Lindsay Collins for the Roosters. Blake Brayley, parallel for the Sharks. Converters Gold, parallel Adam Reynolds. Xavier Savage, parallel for the Raiders. Club Heroes, Kale Iro for the Sharks. Cody Walker, parallel for the Rabbitohs. Gold parallel, Sharks Checklist, number 55. Rising Stars, Fletcher Sharp for the Knights. Latrell Mitchell, parallel for the Rabbitohs. Women's Gold, parallel, Jessica Elliston for the Titans, number 73. Knights, parallel checklist. Rising Stars, Moala for the Warriors. Max Plath, parallel for the Dolphins. Season to remember, Jared Rura-Hargraves for the Roosters. Jake Trbojevic, parallel for Manly. Fan faves, the Hammer for Dolphins. Alex Seafarth, parallel for Tigers. Women's NRL, Jasmine Peters for the Cowboys. Matthew Tomoko, parallel for Raiders. Rising Stars, Grace Kemp for the Raiders. Brighton Nakora, parallel for the Sharks. Showcase, Kalen Ponga for the Knights. Kalen Ponga, parallel for the Knights. Club Heroes, Jerome Hughes for Storm. Reece Robson, parallel for the Cowboys. Fan faves team for the Sharks. Kyle Flanagan, parallel for the Dragons. Rising Stars, Hopper Wate for Manly. Tackling Machines, Georgia Hale for the Titans, number 70. Tyrell Sloan, parallel for the Dragons. Rising Stars, Casey McLean for Panthers. Jerome Hughes, parallel for Storm. The Converters, Nico Hines for Sharks. AJ Brimson, parallel for the Titans. Rising Stars, Samula for the Tigers. Sam Walker, parallel for the Roosters. Women's NRL, Lauren Brown for the Titans. Warriors, parallel checklist. Rising Stars, Dan Kerr for the Eels. Patrick Carrigan, parallel for the Broncos. Season to remember, Ben Hunt for the Dragons. Dylan Edwards, parallel for Panthers. We've got fourth last packet in box number 6. Fan Faze, Tegan Berry for the Dragons. Reed Marnie, parallel for the Bulldogs. Fan Faze, Julia Robinson for the Broncos. Bryce Cartwright, parallel for the Eels. Rising Stars, Montgomery for the Titans. Jacob Preston, parallel for the Bulldogs. Last pack for box number 6. Season to remember, Tamir Martin for the Warriors. And Eels parallel checklist. Alright, box number 7. Showcase, Cameron Murray for the Rabbitohs. Ethan Strange, parallel for the Raiders. Fan Faves in the team for Manly. Rabbitohs parallel checklist. Rising Stars, Max Plath for the Dolphins. Elam Aluki, parallel for Cowboys. Rising Stars, Jacob Lavin for the Warriors. Herbie Farmworth, parallel for the Dolphins. Season to remember, Daniel Tupou for the Roosters. Tommy Talau, parallel for Manly. Fan faves, Herbie Farmworth for the Dolphins. Charlie Staines, parallel for the Tigers. Fan faves, Jessica Surgis for the Roosters. Angus Crichton, parallel for the Roosters. Rising Stars, Morgan Smithies for the Raiders. Tackling Machines, Wade Egan for the Warriors, number 21. Parallel, Jesse Rumian for the Sharks. The Converters, Kira Dibb for the Cowboys. Leo Thompson, parallel for the Knights. Women's NRL Sharks Checklist. Blake Laurie, parallel for the Dragons. Season to remember, Matt Burton for the Bulldogs. Stephen Crichton, parallel for the Bulldogs. Rising Stars, Maverick Gaia for Panthers. Eliza Katoa, parallel for Storm. Season to remember, Zach Lomax for the Dragons. Titans, parallel checklist. Fan phase, Patrick Carrigan for Broncos. Wade Egan, parallel for the Warriors. Women's NRL, Holly May Dodd for the Raiders, number 110. Rising Stars, Benjamin Takura for the Broncos. Dylan Brown, parallel for the Eels. Rising Stars, Charlie Geimer for the Eels. Selwyn Cobbo, parallel for the Broncos. The Converters, Adam Pompey for the Warriors. Moses Leota, parallel for Panthers. Club Heroes, Regan Campbell Gillard for the Eels. Jermaine Hopgood, parallel for the Eels. Women's NRL, Tamika Upton for the Knights. Nathan Cleary, parallel for Panthers. Rising Stars, Tony Francis for the Titans. Connor Tracy, parallel for Bulldogs. Season to remember, Jaden Campbell for the Titans. Dominic Young, parallel for the Roosters. Fan faves, Stephen Crichton for the Bulldogs. Ruben Cotter, parallel for the Cowboys. Club Heroes, Jack Whiten for the Rabbitohs. Payne Haas, parallel for the Broncos. Rising Stars, Alaya for the Roosters. Jamal Fogarty, parallel for the Raiders. Another showcase, a group card. So that's 3 that we'll randomise at the end of the break. Jai Arrow, parallel for the Rabbitohs. Herbie Farmworth, gold, parallel number 18. Oh, look at the hiccups. Jack Bostock, parallel for the Dolphins. Rising Stars, Joe Chan for Storm. Jackson Ford, parallel for the Warriors. Rising Stars, Lycan King for the Dragons. Luke Brooks, parallel for Manly. Converters, Kalen Ponga for the Knights. Justin Olam, parallel for the Tigers. Women's NRL, Emma Manzelmann for the Cowboys. Sharks, parallel checklist. Fan faves, Nico Hines for the Sharks. Big Tino, parallel for the Titans. Rising Stars, Jackson Purdue for the Cowboys. And Kai Pearce Paul, parallel for the Knights. 4 packets left for box number 7. Season to remember, Chad Townsend for the Cowboys. Jacob Little, parallel for the Dragons. Fan phase, Jareem Abdullah for the Tigers. Nick Meaney, parallel for Storm. Rising Stars, Hopoi for the Bulldogs. Jaden Campbell, parallel for Titans. And Lucky Laugh for the box. Season to remember, the Hammer for Dolphins. Harry Grant, parallel for Storm. Alright. Box number 8. Rising Stars, Lily Ann White for the Knights. Tavita Totola, parallel for the Rabbitohs. Season to remember, Tommy Turbo for Manly. Ethan Strange, parallel for the Raiders. Dylan Edwards, fan faves for Panthers. And Rabbitohs parallel checklist. Fan phase Jaden Sewer for the Dragons. KO Weeks parallel for the Raiders. Gold parallel Connor Tracy for the Bulldogs, number 29. Broncos parallel checklist. Rising Stars Jacob Laban for Warriors. Herbie Farnworth parallel for the Dolphins. Club Heroes Ethan Strange for the Raiders. Tommy Talau parallel for Manly. Women's NRL Samima Torfa for the Raiders. Charlie Staines parallel for the Tigers. Showcase Lindsay Collins for the Roosters. Mitchell Barnett parallel for the Warriors. Women's Gold parallel number 110 Broncos checklist. Rising Stars Morgan Smithies for the Raiders. Jesse Ramian parallel for the Sharks. Season to remember Nathan Cleary for Panthers. Leo Thompson, parallel for the Knights. Fan Faves, Jamie Chapman for the Titans. Blake Laurie, parallel for the Dragons. Rising Stars, Maverick Gaia for Panthers. Eliza Katoa, parallel for Storm. Season to remember, Regan Campbell Gillard for the Eels. Jacob Little, parallel for the Dragons. Harry Grant, fan phase for Storm. Nick Meaney, parallel for Storm. Rising Stars, Hapoi for the Bulldogs. Jaden Campbell, parallel for the Titans. Showcase David Fafita for Titans. Titans parallel checklist. Rising Stars, Peter for the Rabbitohs. Scott Sorensen, parallel for Panthers. Fan faves in the team for Cowboys. Wade Egan, parallel for the Warriors. Rising Stars, Charlie Geimer for the Eels. Selwyn Cobbo, parallel for Broncos. The Converters, Racine McGregor for Dragons. Mitchell Moses, parallel for Eels. Season to remember, Hudson Young for the Raiders. Moses Leota, parallel for Panthers. Fan Faze, Latrell Mitchell for the Rabbitohs. Jermaine Hopgood, parallel for the Eels. Rising Stars, Tony Francis for the Titans. Connor Tracy, parallel for the Bulldogs. The Converters, Apasai Coruscant for Tigers. Dominic Young, parallel for the Roosters. Women's NRL Knights Checklist. Max King, parallel for the Bulldogs. Women's NRL Millie Elliott for the Roosters. Stephen Cotter, parallel for the Cowboys. Rising Stars, Elias Nasio for the Roosters. Jamal Fogarty, parallel for the Raiders. Season to remember, Lachlan Galvin for the Tigers. Jai Arrow, parallel for the Rabbitohs. Rising Stars, Lachlan Galvin for the Tigers. Victor Radley, parallel for the Roosters. Fan Faves, Greg Marshew for the Knights. Jack Bostock, parallel for Dolphins. Rising Stars, Liking King for the Dragons. Luke Brooks, parallel for Manly. Season to remember, Tane for the Warriors. Murray Talagi, parallel for the Cowboys. Premiership Predictor, number 111, all the 11s, NRL W for the Broncos. Justin Olam, parallel for the Tigers. Club Heroes, Bree Chester for the Cowboys. Sharks, parallel checklist. Alright, last one for box number 8. Gold Converters, Kyle Flanagan for the Dragons. Rising Stars, Jackson Purdue for the Cowboys. And parallel, Kai Pierce Paul for the Knights. Put these in here, and these over there. And let's get on to the next one. Box number 9. Season to remember, Xavier Coates for Storm. Jeremy Marshall King, parallel for Dolphins. Fan Faves, Mitchell Moses for the Eels. Manly, parallel checklist. Gold Converters, Jermaine Isako for the Dolphins. Rising Stars, Liam Eisen for the Sharks. Adam Dewey, parallel for the Tigers. Club Heroes, Jaden Sewer for the Dragons. Thomas Hazelton, parallel for the Sharks. Women's NRL, Tiana Penatani for the Sharks. Phoenix Crossland, parallel for the Knights. Rising Stars, Ethan for Manly. Jaden Sewer, parallel for the Dragons. Season to remember, Herbie Farnworth for the Dolphins. Xavier Coates, parallel for Storm. Ben Faves, Tiana Penatani for the Sharks. Alifiana Campiera, parallel for Titans. Rising Stars, Lazarus for the Storm. Roger Tuivasa Sheck, parallel for Warriors. Showcase of Alami Kickout for the Bulldogs. Tony Staggs, parallel for Broncos. Gold parallel Leo Thompson for the Knights, number 61. Isaac Tago, parallel for Panthers. Rising Stars, Josiah for the Broncos. Joe Offengowie, parallel for the Eels. Season to remember, Connor Tracy for the Bulldogs. Salami Kickout, parallel for the Bulldogs. Fan Faves, Connor Watson for the Roosters. Spencer Linu, parallel for the Roosters. Rising Stars, Jack Bostock for the Dolphins. Cowboys, parallel checklist. The Converters, Nathan Cleary for Panthers. Joseph Tarpanay, parallel for the Raiders. Women's NRL, Shania Power for the Cowboys. Jack Whiten, parallel for the Rabbitohs. Rising Stars, Dimitri for the Warriors. The Hammer, parallel for Dolphins. Season to remember, Samantha Bremner for the Roosters. Tommy Turbo, parallel for Manly. Fan faves Mark Nichols for the Dolphins and Samula parallel for the Tigers. Rising Stars Chevy Stewart for the Raiders. Nico Hines parallel for the Sharks. Team fan faves for the Knights. Dane Gagai parallel for the Knights. Club Heroes Tommy Turbo for Manly. Dragons parallel checklist. Rising Stars Liam Henry for Panthers. Parallel Trent LaRoe for Storm. Season to remember Alexis for the Dragons. Keanu Kinney parallel for the Titans. Fan faves Reece Welsh for the Broncos. Dylan Witeen Zalesniak parallel for the Warriors. Women's Gold Abby Church for the Eels, number 118. Rory Owen, Rising Stars for the Eels, and Reece Welsh parallel for the Broncos. Showcase Kalen Ponga for the Knights. Panthers parallel checklist. Retirements. Brad Parker for Manly. Will Penasini parallel for the Eels. Rising Stars Hulu for the Titans. Matt Burton parallel for the Bulldogs. Converters Lauren Brown for the Titans. James Tedesco parallel for the Roosters. We've got fifth last packet for box number 9. Casey Ray Dragons for the women's NRL. Scott Drinkwater parallel for Cowboys. Rising Stars Blake Steep for the Roosters. Raiders parallel checklist. Season to remember, Jamie Chapman for the Titans. Keon Kolomatangi parallel for the Rabbitohs. Fan faves, Reed Marnie for the Bulldogs. Jermaine Isako parallel for the Dolphins. Rising Stars, Casey Ray for the Dragons again. Ruben Garrick parallel for Manly. And that is the end of box number 9. Alright, box number 10 out of the case. We do have 3 boxes left to go after that one. They look better when they all face the same way. There you go. So 4 boxes in total to go for this one. Season to remember, Alafiana Khan Piera for Titans. Connor Watson parallel for the Roosters. Fan faves, Jacob Preston for the Bulldogs. Jason Tormalolo parallel for the Cowboys. Gold parallel, Jacob Little for the Dragons. Number 25. Rising Stars, Ethan King for Roosters. Hudson Young parallel for the Raiders. Club Heroes, Julia Robinson for the Broncos. Alex Johnston parallel for the Rabbitohs. Romy Teetsall, Women's NRL for the Broncos. Dolphins parallel checklist. Rising Star, Sione for the Dragons. Daly Cherry Evans parallel for Manly. Rising Stars, Caleb Neville for Manly. Raymond Fatala Mariner parallel for the Dragons. Showcase, Ethan Strange for the Raiders. Harry Grant parallel for Storm. Season to remember, Kira Dibb for the Cowboys. Lachlan Galvin parallel for the Tigers. Fan phase, Alex Twal for the Tigers. Ronaldo Mulatalo, parallel for the Sharks. Rising Stars, Lily Peacock for the Cowboys. Bradman Best, parallel for the Knights. Showcase, Lachlan Galvin for the Tigers. Luciano Leilua, parallel for the Tigers. Dragons, used to be Tigers. And you get to still watch live, Jeff. The Converters Gold, Jesse Southwell for the Knights. Storm, parallel checklist. Rising Stars, Harry Hayes for the Bulldogs. Mawaki Fodawaika, parallel for Titans. Season to remember, Stacey Awaka for Broncos. Chance Nico Clockstad, parallel for the Warriors. Fan Faves, Jake Trbojevic for Manly. Adam Reynolds, parallel for the Broncos. Rising Stars, Jai Gray for the Rabbitohs. Liam Martin, parallel for Panthers. Women's NRL, Keezy Apps for the Tigers. Jacob Carraz, parallel for the Bulldogs. Rising Stars, Evie McGrath for the Tigers. Roosters, parallel checklist. Season to remember, Alex Johnston for the Rabbitohs. Jeremiah Nanai, parallel for Cowboys. Retirement, Jordan Rapana for the Raiders. Big Tino, parallel for Titans. Fan Faves, Ruben Cotter for the Cowboys. Morgan Smithies, parallel for the Raiders. Rising Stars, Kai Pearce Paul for the Knights. Cameron Murray, parallel for the Rabbitohs. Rising Stars, Joe Chan for Storm. Jackson Ford, parallel for the Warriors. Women's NRL Gold, Tarrant Aiken for the Roosters, number 166. Parallel, Felice Kafusi for Dolphins. Club Heroes, Liam Henry for the Panthers. Hamoli Olaka'atu, parallel for Manly. Rising Stars, Max Plath for the Dolphins. Helam Lukey, parallel for the Cowboys. Rising Stars, Samuel Stonestreet for the Sharks. Tigers, parallel checklist. Team fan faves for the Cowboys. Rising Stars, Benjamin for the Broncos. Dylan Brown, parallel for the Eels. Season to remember, Anessa Biddle for the Sharks. Stephen Crichton, parallel for the Bulldogs. Converters, Romy Teasel for the Broncos. Payne Haas, parallel for the Broncos. Fan faves, Roger Tuivasa check for the Warriors. Dylan Lucas, parallel for the Knights. Women's NRL, Mahalia Murphy for the Eels. Nathan Cleary, parallel for Panthers. Season to remember, Tamika Upton for the Knights. William Kennedy, parallel for the Sharks. Fan phase in the team for the Raiders. KO Weeks. Roosters, parallel, Angus Crichton for the Roosters. Last one for box number 10. Converters, Adam Pompey for the Warriors and Sean Lane, parallel for the Eels. Box number 11. Season to remember, Isaac Tago for Panthers. Kalen Ponga, parallel for Knights. Fan faves, Alexander Brimson for the Titans, Kyle Flanagan parallel for the Dragons. Gold parallel, Charlie Staines for the Tigers, number 71. Rising Stars, Casey McLean for Panthers. Parallel, Jerome Hughes for Storm. Club Heroes, Tamika Upton for the Knights. Alexander Brimson, parallel for Titans. Women's NRL, Kennedy Sherrington for the Eels. Warriors, parallel checklist. Rising Stars, Dan Kerr for the Eels. Patrick Carrigan, parallel for the Broncos. Season to remember, Madison Bartlett for the Raiders. Dylan Edwards, parallel for Panthers. Fan faves, Navilli for the Rabbitohs. Bryce Cartwright, parallel for Eels. Rising Stars, Montgomery for the Titans. Jacob Preston, parallel for the Bulldogs. Showcase, Herbie Farnworth for the Dolphins. Connor Watson, parallel for the Roosters. Gold Converters, Kira Dibb for Cowboys. Jason Tormalolo, parallel for Cowboys. Rising Stars, Ethan King for the Roosters. Hudson Young, parallel for the Raiders. Season to remember, Rebecca Pollard for the Tigers. Alex Johnston, parallel for the Rabbitohs. Retirement, Kyle Felt for the Cowboys. Morgan Smithies, parallel for the Raiders. Rising Stars, Lily Peacock for the Cowboys. Raven Best, parallel for Knights. Rising Stars, Kai Pearce Paul for the Knights. Cameron Murray, parallel for the Rabbitohs. Season to remember, Zali Faye for the Eels. Luciano Leilua, parallel for the Dragons. The Converters, Mitchell Moses for the Eels. Felice Kafusi, parallel for Dolphins. Fan faves, Ryan Pappenhausen for the Storm. Storm parallel checklist. Rising Stars, Harry Hayes for the Bulldogs. Owaki Fotowaka, parallel for the Titans. Women's NRL, Jessica Surgis for the Roosters. Molly Olaka-Atu, parallel for Manly. Gold parallel in the women's, Pauline Razabel for the Tigers, number 129. Chance Nicole Klokstad, parallel for the Warriors. Club Heroes, Samula Fanu for the Tigers. Adam Reynolds, parallel for Broncos. Fan faves in the team for the Raiders. Rising Stars for the Sharks. And Tigers parallel checklist. Season to remember, Jerome Hughes for Storm. William Kennedy parallel for the Sharks. Season fan faves, Kennedy Sherrington for the Eels. Dylan Lucas parallel for the Knights. Rising Stars, Caleb for Manly. Raymond Faitala Mariner parallel for the Dragons. Rising Stars, Evie McGrath for the Tigers. Roosters parallel checklist. Rising Stars, Jai Gray for the Rabbitohs. Parallel Liam Martin for Panthers. Season to remember, Sean Johnson for the Warriors. Sean Lane parallel for the Eels. Sixth last packet for box number 11. Fan faves, Blake Laurie for the Dragons. Jacob Carraz parallel for the Bulldogs. Showcase Roger Tuivasa check for Warriors. Jeremiah Nanai parallel for Cowboys. Fan Faves Yasmin Clydesdale for the Knights. Dolphins parallel checklist. Rising Stars Sione for the Dragons. And Daly Cherry Evans parallel for Manly. The Converters Zahara Tamara for the Raiders. And Lachlan Galvin parallel for the Tigers. Lucky last packet for the box. Women's NRL Grace Kemp for the Raiders. Renato Multalo parallel for the Sharks. And that is the end of the box. I'm just going to grab a drink. Mouth's a bit dry. Alright, this one's felt like a bit of a long one. It's still the same amount of time. Maybe because it's quiet. You're all leaving me alone. Good thing and a bad thing. Alright, box number 12, last box of the case. Valami Kickout, Club Heroes for Bulldogs. David Fafita, parallel for Titans. Season to Remember, Kyle Felt for the Cowboys. Apasai Coruscant, parallel for Tigers. Fan Faves, Sarah Togatuki for the Tigers. Cameron McInnes, parallel for the Sharks. Fan Faves in the team for Panthers. Rising Stars, Harrison Edwards for the Cowboys, and Greg Marshue parallel for Knights. Gold Converters, Mitchell Moses for the Eels. Cam Munster parallel for Storm. Club Heroes, Teddy for the Roosters. Jack DeBellin parallel for the Dragons. Women's NRL, Georgia Hale for the Titans. Ryan Pappenhausen parallel for Storm. Rising Stars, Bailey Haywood for the Bulldogs. Jojo Fafita, parallel for Titans. Rising Stars, Hopper Wate for Manly. Tyrell Sloan, parallel for the Dragons. Season to remember, Katoni Staggs for Broncos. Tamir Martin, parallel for the Warriors. Fan faves, Tommy Turbo for Manly. Dean Mariner, parallel for the Broncos. Rising Stars, Dion for the Rabbitohs. Brian Tyler, parallel for Panthers. Showcase Patrick Carrigan for the Broncos. Eels, parallel checklist. Fan faves, Tohu Harris for the Warriors. Knights, parallel checklist. Women's Gold, Yasmin Clydesdale for the Knights, number 60. Reed Marnie, parallel for the Bulldogs. Rising Stars, Samula for the Tigers. Sam Walker, parallel for the Roosters. Season to remember, Jai Arrow for the Rabbitohs. Reece Robson, parallel for the Cowboys. Rising Stars, Georgia Hannaway for the Sharks. Dream Buller, parallel for the Tigers. Season to remember, David Armstrong for the Knights. Blake Brayley, parallel for the Sharks. Rising Stars for Storm. Tohu Harris, parallel for the Warriors. Season to remember, Dale Finucane for the Sharks. Ezra Mam, parallel for Broncos. Fan Phase, Mackenzie Wiki for the Raiders. Isaiah Yeo, parallel for Panthers. Women's NRL, Stacey Waka for the Broncos. Tolator Koala, parallel for Manly. Rising Stars, Skylar Adams for Broncos. Micah Sivo, parallel for the Eels. Showcase Ryan Pappenhausen for Storm. Bulldogs parallel checklist. Jack Whiten, gold parallel for the Rabbitohs, number 25. Lindsay Collins, parallel for the Roosters. Converters, Matt Burton for the Bulldogs. Isaiah Katoa, parallel for the Dolphins. Rising Stars, Oren Keeley for the Dolphins. Tommy Dearden, parallel for the Cowboys. Converters, Sam Walker for the Roosters. Xavier Savage, parallel for the Raiders. Women's NRL Tigers checklist. Cody Walker, parallel for the Rabbitohs. Rising Stars, Fletcher Sharp for the Knights. And Dally M in the men's for the Sharks. Number 32. Latrell Mitchell, parallel for the Rabbitohs. Rising Stars, Mawala Graham for the Warriors. Max Plath, parallel for the Dolphins. 4 packets left in this box. Season to remember, Daly Cherry Evans for Manly. Jake Trbojevic, parallel for Manly. Fan faves, Tommy Dearden for the Cowboys, and Matthew Tomoko, parallel for the Raiders. Fan phase, Nathan Cleary for Panthers. Alex Seaworth, parallel for the Tigers. Lucky last packet for the box. Rising Stars, Grace Kemp for the Raiders, and Brighton Nakora, parallel for the Sharks. Right, let's get these ones tidied up. And we can get stuck into our priority box. Lucky last for the break. Alright, priority, here we come. Where Season to remember Xavier Coates for the Storm. Blake Brayley parallel for the Sharks. Fan faves Mitchell Moses. Excuse me. Knights parallel checklist. Gold parallel for the women's number 157. Eels checklist. Rising Stars, Casey McLean for Panthers. Tyrell Sloan, parallel for the Dragons. Club Heroes. Number 19, Dane Gagai for the Knights. So don't forget, if you're not aware, our 3 parallel priority versions are your Gold Club Heroes, your Gold Converters are numbered, and your fan or your team fan faves are also numbered with a different finish on them. Cam Munster parallel for Storm, and that Club Heroes was our first priority hit for the box. Still a few more to go. Women's NRL, Gail Broughton for the Broncos. David Fafita parallel for Titans. Rising Stars, Dan Kerr for the Eels. Tohu Harris parallel for the Warriors. Rising Stars, Caleb for Manly. Bradman Best parallel for Knights. Season to remember, Herbie Farmworth for the Dolphins. Ezra Mam parallel for Broncos. Fan faves, Tiana Penatani for the Sharks. Isaiah Yo parallel for Panthers. Rising Stars, Leilani Montgomery for Titans. Micah Sivo parallel for the Eels. Showcase Herbie Farmworth for Dolphins. Bulldogs parallel checklist. Season to remember, Jamie Chapman for the Titans. Lachlan Galvin parallel for the Tigers. Fan faves, Reed Marnie for the Bulldogs. Ronaldo Mulatalo parallel for the Sharks. Luke Brooks, gold parallel for Manly, number 28. Had to get the right angle then. Lindsay Collins, parallel for the Roosters. Rising Stars, Ethan King for the Roosters. Tommy Dearden, parallel for the Cowboys. Season to remember, Connor Tracy for the Bulldogs. Xavier Savage, parallel for the Raiders. Fan faves, Connor Watson for the Roosters. Cody Walker, parallel for the Rabbitohs. Rising Stars, Samuel Stonestreet for the Sharks. Daly Cherry Evans, parallel for Manly. Rising Stars, Sione for now for the Dragons. Max Platt, parallel for the Dolphins. Converters, Jermaine Isako for the Dolphins. Jake Trbojevic, parallel for Manly. Parallel, Rabitil Avet Welsh for the Tigers. Alex Seyfarth, parallel for Tigers. Rising Stars, Lily Peacock for the Cowboys. Brighton Nakora, parallel for Sharks. Season to remember, Samantha Bremner for the Roosters. Kalen Ponga, parallel for the Knights. Fan faves, Mark Nichols for the Dolphins. Kyle Flanagan, parallel for the Dragons. Women's, Elsie Albert for the Eels. Dolphins parallel checklist. Rising Stars, Harry Hayes for the Bulldogs. Jerome Hughes, parallel for Storm. Team fan faves for the Eels, number 30. Daryl Barton with the Eels. Alexander Brimson, parallel for Titans. And our second Gold Club Heroes, number 31, Lycan King for the Dragons. Warriors parallel checklist. Jimmy Dore. Rising Stars, dry grey for the Rabbitohs. Patrick Carrigan, parallel for Broncos. Our 7th last packet for the break. Season to remember, Alexis for the Dragons. Dylan Edwards, parallel for Panthers. Fan faves, Reece Walsh for Broncos. Bryce Cartwright, parallel for the Eels. The Converters, Adam Reynolds for Broncos. Alex Johnston, parallel for the Rabbitohs. Converters Priority Gold, number 13. Kira Gibb for the Cowboys. Yeah, Roosters had a few hits. Rising Stars, Evie McGrath for the Tigers. Jacob Preston, parallel for the Bulldogs. Showcase, Tommy Dearden for the Cowboys. Connor Watson, parallel for the Roosters. Retirements, Edric Lee for the Dolphins. And parallel, Jason Tormalolo for the Cowboys. Lucky last packet for the break. Rising Stars, Kai Pearce Paul for the Knights. And Hudson Young, parallel for the Raiders. Well, that's it for the break. We do have our 3 group header cards to randomise. We'll randomise them individually, which means everyone's name will get spun 3 lots of 3 times. Alright. Oh, we have the $100 gift card as well. That will be last. Alright, let's get in there. Copy that. So 4 in total. Here we go. Number 1, number 2, and lucky last number 3. Craig Milson with our first showcase card for the Dragons. Let's reset. Alright, number 1, number 2, and lucky last number 3. Paul Cohen with the Sharks. Alright, last one. Number 1, number 2, and lucky last number 3. Peter Lowe with the Bulldogs. Alright, now most importantly, the $100 gift card. Last time, let's go. Number 1, number 2, and here we go for the final one. Paul Cohen with the Sharks. Alright, mate, I will fix that up and get it sent out via email ASAP. Don't forget, all team hits will be pictured and put up in the Facebook group and on the Facebook page for everyone to check out. Until then, guys, be sure to check out the available break spots on the website, and I hope to see you again soon.